Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Okay, well, I am so freaking happy about the podcast that I'm doing with my best friend.
With your best friend.
Some of you guys thought I was talking about Justin, but you were wrong.
Nope.
Nope.
No, he's number 2. I'm number 1.
There's nothing unhealthy about having your best friend stay your number 1.
I 100% think that my marriage wouldn't work unless you weren't my number 1. Like, Johnny's very happy for you to be my number 1.
For those of you who are just joining us on The Connected Life, this is Pietze. She has been my best friend. I'm not going to say how young we were when we met, but I will say that we've been friends for 31 years,
Ugh.
which mostly makes me feel old.
That makes us feel
But we were
ancient.
we were like in the womb, probably. I mean, we weren't even.
Oh
born
yeah,
back
we
then.
were. Yeah, it was like one of the John the Baptist situations. Like we knew each other in the womb.
No, we met when I was 7. It's just that I'm old. But so Pietze and me have been best friends for a long time. She's been on this podcast before. You should definitely check out the episodes that she's been on. She shared her personal story with finding out her daughter was autistic and the redemption in the midst of that. She's shared her story about being a pastor's kid and having to deconstruct her faith and figure out who she was outside of that world and performance. She's talked about, and then she and Johnny did a series on our podcast that's very powerful about them sharing their marriage story and recognizing the parts they each play. And me and Pietze have created a course called the Pathway to Freedom, which we will be running probably sometime this year. If you want to be on the list, the email list to know when that's happening and how that's happening, I'm really excited about running that. We're doing a call this week to actually just hear about people's lives and how much they changed from doing that course, which is really fun.
Yeah.
It's about learning how to understand what's going on inside of you and understand what's going on inside of the people around you. It is beautifully compassionate and healing and full of hope. But if you want to be on the list to know, be the first to know about when we do that, go ahead and go to Justin and Abby, ABI, justinandabi.com. You can sign up to be in the know for all of that stuff. We will be doing that
In
soon.
the know.
Mm-hmm. And so that's
Yep.
just a quick rundown about Pietze. And Pietze is a life consultant. And so she's been working for, a while. I don't know why I'm giving times, but she's been doing this. She's been doing this job where she helps people go on the emotional health journey and work through stuff. And so Pietze, we have an interesting podcast we're doing today. Do you want to talk about it?
Yes, it's a very interesting podcast. I'm very excited about it. So if you follow me on Instagram, you know that this year I officiated my first wedding, which is pretty
Ooh.
amazing. And there's a pretty cool backstory behind this wedding and the two people who were in the wedding, the two people who came together in the wedding. And so they are both clients of mine, and we have them on today to share the epic story of what happened and how we got to the point of them standing up at the altar. So
yes, so
welcome,
we're about to
Josh and
hear
Rick.
a
Go ahead.
fantastic redemptive love story.
Yeah.
A very
Yep.
real, a messy in the
Messy.
sense that just human, like just very human.
Yeah. Just
They're like,
human.
you haven't heard my story. You don't know if it's messy or not.
What are you talking about? It's perfect. But no, what I love about Josh and Rachel's story is that I think that so many people will be able to relate to both of their experiences
Mhm.
of walking out being single, of hope deferred, of heartbreak, of challenge, of purity culture, of all these different elements that brought them to where they were. I think that, we get people all the time asking us like about doing single life well and so much that goes into being single, whether it's working through the heartbreak and working through dating and everything that comes through that, or working through waiting a long time, or, you know, working through if you had pain from purity culture, different things like that. And so what I love about Josh and Rachel's story is exactly that. It's a human story that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to and hopefully find a lot of hope in.
Yeah. So welcome, Josh and Rachel. We're so glad that you're here with us. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having us on.
Oh,
Yes,
we're
We're really excited.
Oh, you guys are so
Yay.
cute. I wish everybody could see your cute faces. Yeah, one thing I want to do before we jump in, and then we'll just jump in and have you and Pietze kind of lead this, is Pietze obviously asked their permission to share this story on our podcast. So everything that we will be talking about, there has been permission given for that, for any of you that are like, oh my gosh, that'd be crazy. So just wanting you to know that we're all good. They
I
are
just
smiling.
randomly called them and said, hey guys, I'm sharing your story and talk. I need this.
Well, you know, people actually get real anxiety about like if that's okay for other people. So I just thought it'd ease everybody's nerves. So Pietze,
Bring
why
the
don't you
trigger level down?
What?
The trigger level down in the room, Abs. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
If you want to learn how to work through triggers, Pathway to Freedom, you can sign up on the email list.
Our story triggers, you sign up.
Yeah, there you go. It's perfect. Okay, so I think let's kick it off. Rachel, why don't you just kind of start? I'll have you guys both kind of share your journey of singleness and what it was like for you guys. So Rach, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I did not grow up knowing God or in the church at all. So that kind of shaped how my relationships were when I was younger, just sleeping around with people, doing drugs, drinking, like at 15. And
You were in it to win it, girl.
yeah, I was like, I'm very TMI, so
There's no such thing as
No,
TMI
there's
on the
no
Connected
such
Life.
thing as TMI.
Nope.
I love to share it all. But yeah, I mean, I was the one cheating on people, like mostly just to protect myself, which I realized later on, just fear of being hurt. So I had hurt other people first, and
It's very
just lived
normal.
in that. Yeah, just lived in that lifestyle for a while. And then I started dating this girl for a really long time, for like 2 years, I think. And then she came from a Christian family, actually. And that's when I started to kind of learn about God. And then
There for a second, because I love that God will use anything to get to us, you know?
oh yeah,
Like,
it was her grandma, like all the time, like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to pray. And I'm like, what is this whole world? Yeah, she was so sweet. And just to backtrack for a second, like when I was in first grade, my parents got divorced. And then shortly after that, my dad became a Christian. So he would kind of try to tell us about the Lord, but I was like not about it. So against it. And then he ended up passing away. And then I think when I was 18, and then when he passed away, that's when I found out about the Lord. It was actually my one of my best friends, who also was like my drug dealer, who was just radically got saved.
Your best friend who was your drug dealer. That is a good person to be best friends with, because discounts are worth it.
It's so
yeah, there you go.
just hang out with your drug dealer and get the free drugs, and find the Lord. It all
There you go.
Wait, so you and your I missed it because I don't think I heard it. What you and your best friend found God together?
Yeah, he started going to church, and he was like, you have to know the Lord. And I was just so like, I was starting to feel God tug on me through dreams, and just got invited to church and started. I had actually gone on a missions trip even before I'd say I officially gave my life to God. And yeah, even like I would not be considered what you'd call saved, but miracles were still happening and things like that. So I was saved, just on fire for the Lord. And like, I kind of came into what Pietze would call like that purity culture, where it was like, oh, there's one person for you. And And I'm like, oh, okay. And like I really didn't know anything. Like people would
The one.
yeah, the
The
one.
one, dun dun dun. If you grew up in the church, especially in the 90s and 2000s, and maybe even still now, you know about the one.
Yeah. And
There
so
is no other one for you other than the one that God has for you. And you have to find who the one is.
And you can't live your destiny without that person. And you won't be who you're supposed to be without that person. And if you find that person, you'll have a great life.
And everything will be okay. And you know what? This has led to, I would say, millions of people in analysis paralysis around the opposite sex because they're overthinking everything. Like, oh my gosh, he didn't call me back. Does that mean he's not the one? So you are affected by that.
Go ahead,
got
Rachel.
The one culture, purity culture.
Yeah. So I was just started going after the Lord, never went on like any dates, never really found healthy environments to even get to know like Christian men. So I was just like 8 years, like,
wow,
shut up in my room with the Lord, and had really great encounters, was set free of so many different things. Just from my past.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, it's interesting because while, coming into that thinking of the one and the pressure of that, there was also a good side to it, which is that kind of took this break from dating, which allowed your heart to really get healed in that area, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and really establish like my relationship with God, and just had ministry opportunities open up to lead a women's Bible study and go on mission trips to China and India and just go around the world. Like, yeah, I think I may have only went on 2 dates, and one of the guys, I think I scared away because I was like, I'm going to Africa, and he's like, oh, I'm called to America, so I'll see you later. And I'm like, oh, all right, he wasn't the one. Here I go. But yeah, so and then I started going, just had wonderful God encounters and just so close to the Lord. And it was amazing just how he turned my life around. It was literally a 180. And then I started to hang out in a group of friends, and a guy had told me that he liked me and that he really felt like this was God. But I was like, I'm not really sure. Like, I just, I had thought, I had prayed a really dumb prayer too of like, God, don't let any man pursue me that's not my husband. And like literally no guys talked to me. And then it was the whole like, you're just hidden in God, which there is seasons of that, but sometimes it's like, I think there needs to be more healthy opportunities for people of the opposite sex to get to know each other. And so he ended up being like, I feel like you're my wife, blah, blah, and which caused so much confusion in me. And then some weird prophetic things happened. But the whole time dating him, I was just feeling such anxiety, and there were red flags, but then there were also these like weird coincidences that were like, could this be God? But it's like there was no peace. And there were even some people in my life who were like, no, absolutely not. And then I just started to withdraw from people and just be in this relationship. And we had broken up a lot too, but then it came to a place of like where we got back together. And while dating, he still was pretty addicted to pornography, but he was like trying to get out of it. But near the end, towards getting married, like I could tell like he's not walking with the Lord anymore and things like that. But I was just like, I've got to do this. Like, it's almost like I started losing myself, and that's like when it all began. And then we got married, and a month in, things started just getting really bad. And then I also, a month into that too, found out I was pregnant. And so it was just hard being in a marriage where someone's like gaslighting you all the time. They're like heavily addicted to pornography and had other like sexual issues. that were just really hard to walk through, and then also just verbally abusive, emotionally. Like I just completely lost myself. Like it was like my one friend who like was with me in there, she just was like, you got so dark, like you didn't have your light anymore. And that was just, the marriage just started getting really hard. Like I told Pietze, like I would be sleeping on friends and family's couches while pregnant, just not feeling safe in my own home. Even one time, like waking up at 4 a.m. being scared for my life and running outside of my house at 4 a.m. pregnant and calling my sister to come pick me up, and just so many horrendous things. And I could just start to, like, after my daughter was born, who, thank God for one of my friends, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I gonna do? Like, I have this baby, and she's like, your baby is like a blessing from the Lord. And just that really held me with that. I can so relate to people who are pregnant and just feel hopeless because you're in this terrible relationship and you're about to bring a baby into the world. That's so scary. But I just could feel God tugging on my heart that something was going to change, like something was going to happen. And I ended up finding out like all these horrible things that were going on behind the scenes. And I just remember laying in my bed, just sobbing, which I do so much in the night, being like, God, get me out of this. Like Pietze and I were talking about, I'm like, I felt like I'd blown it. Like I had all these beautiful promises of God, of just being in ministry and, you know, really feeling like a call on my life to do something for God. And I just was like, I think I ruined it, basically. Like I didn't ever feel like God wasn't there, because he always was, but it was just, you can't like fully be yourself, like when you're scared every time your husband comes home and you're like listening to worship and then you have to turn it off right when they come in the door. It just was like not a safe environment for a lot of different reasons. But
and that's really showing how far it had digressed, you know. And I think it's so interesting, the dichotomy of when you first met this guy, like, you know, he didn't look anything like he did in marriage. Like, you know, you guys met in church, and while there were some huge, you know, in retrospect, you're seeing these, you know, you recognize, oh, there was a lot of red flags, but there was also prophetic words and signs. And so then you kind of just tunnel vision towards it. And, you know, I think so many people can relate with, you know, sometimes after you get married, you start to see things. And I think that was popping up before, but again, it was that tunnel focus to the point where, you know, leading up to that point where you were in your room crying, you know, so much, it was such a stark contrast from how it started to where it ended. Or ended up being, you know.
Right. Yeah. So we ended up separating for a while, and then I knew it was gonna end in divorce. We, you know, he basically was like, I want this lifestyle that he was living, just never being home and being promiscuous. And I was like, okay, I'm not like having my daughter experience this, or me. You know, my friends were like, you've been a single mom this whole time, like, so it's not like you haven't been one already. And so we got divorced. I think it was like right a couple months before we got divorced, I got on Pietze's waiting list to meet with her. And it was probably a month before the divorce was finalized that I started seeing Pietze. And that's when I felt like, obviously seeing Pietze and then just getting out of that environment, such a weight lifted. And like people are like, you can see it in your face, your glow is coming back. And even Pietze, not knowing me, praying for me on our first call, she's like, if you were to stay in that, it only would have gotten darker and darker and darker. It was just so bad. But yeah, I feel you and Pietze did a podcast, I think a while ago, of hearing God for your future, part 1 and 2. I send that to everyone because I'm like, oh my gosh, if single people could get their hands on this for dating, and that it just brought so much peace to me hearing that podcast and so much clarity, even though I heard it after the fact. But
well, it's so true. And it's something I'll just park on this for just a second, which is your story is, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with, hundreds, if not thousands, that have that story of they thought God told them somebody to marry. And so they ran over their own voice. They ran over their own red flags. They ran over their own desires. They abandoned themselves because they thought that's what God wanted. And it is wildly confusing. You feel like God tells you to get into a marriage with somebody who abuses you. What do you do with that? You're like, so did God want this for me? Did he want me to go through this kind of pain and heartache? Did God decide I could handle? Like, what kind of good dad? I mean, like, because if you think about it like a dad, if my dad knew I was marrying someone who was going to destroy my soul and he blessed it, that'd be very confusing. And so I think there's a lot of people out there, and this is why I want single people to learn to own their lives with God. We're meant to be in partnership with God. God is not meant to dictate to us choices. And if we cut ourselves off and abandon ourselves on God's behalf, it very rarely works out well for us. There comes a time where there has to be that wrestling with God and that frustration if you feel that, or confusion. I just remember so much my own story with a guy who treated me horribly, and I thought God told me he was the one. And so I stayed in that relationship so long, and it was devastating for me. And I was so relieved when I realized that I didn't think that was actually God, that I thought the coincidences and all the crazy prophetic things, like now I could look back and be like, yeah, well, it was in the air. It was like our energy. Like, I think a lot of times people don't give credit for even like the energetic interactions around something. Anyway, I'm now on a tangent, and I don't want to because I'm excited about your love story. So we can keep going on. Should we jump to Josh's story? Or
yeah, let's jump to Josh. Why don't you kind of share your backstory, Josh, up to meeting me?
Yeah. So I was raised in a Christian family. I would say I was exposed to, like, from a young age, a lot of the same purity culture, finding the one. So that's definitely a similarity. I didn't really date anyone until I was in my 20s because of that. And then went through a series of very difficult relationships because of that, like that attachment to like finding that one person. So, you know, a lot of similarities there. I know in a lot of ways, those relationships falling apart saved me looking back now. But then also going through those, you know, making poor choices at times, you know, compromising convictions and beliefs, and dealing with like a lot of shame and worthiness around those things, as, you know, growing up as a Christian.
That's high stakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a ton of pressure. And after a really difficult, like pretty much the second relationship that I was in, really difficult, like heartbreaking relationship, I kind of retreated into myself and did a lot of deconstructing and reassessing, and Actually found Justin and Blair Reynolds' podcast, the Liberation Project, and just started to grow in so many things, and just kind of rebuilding myself and starting over in a lot of ways. And after a number of years of doing that, I was like, okay, if I do want to be married, holding on to these promises that I felt in my heart, and just a pull to be a father and a husband. It's just something that I've always lived with. I always joke with my dad. I'm like, it's just on us Kearney men that we're his dad was just such a dad. My dad is such a dad. And I just felt that same thing from a young age. And so like holding on to those promises, like, well, I have to do something. I have to go meet people again. I can't just be here. And so I got set up a few times by some friends. I went on some online dates, and I ran into a string of just being ghosted. It was one after the other.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. And I think so many people can relate to that. It like really triggers, like, that's what makes dating sometimes scary, is that feeling of like, what if they ghost me? What if I get rejected? But it's kind of part of the process. Unfortunately, you wish people could be powerful and have a powerful conversation saying, hey, I'm not feeling this anymore. But it is part of the process so much, So I think that's so relatable, Josh.
Yeah, it was really difficult because it felt such a contrast to everything else that I had been learning, where I was finding more of my voice and more of my power. I felt like I was putting myself out there in really healthy ways. And then when you're being met with that, it did definitely cause me to doubt myself at times, like, and look and even ask, like, what's wrong? Like, what is wrong with me? Which was very difficult at times. And I would say, though, on the positive side of all of that, the thing that I kept turning to was, how can I grow in who I am, where I'm at?
Wow.
As like, I have lived in this hope deferred, as I've lived in this waiting, as I've watched friend after friend get married, have kids, start their family, and so many people talk to you like, oh, your turn will come, or like, just like they almost talk to you like, oh, just wait, and once this comes to you, then your life can start.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So you're like, I just have to not live yet, I guess.
And yet I knew that, and kept chasing after the things of being a father, of being a really good friend in healthy, strong relationships. Even before I was a father, I was able to mentor some young men and read lots of parenting books and marriage books.
Yeah, this is the guy that read parenting books when he was single, believing, holding on to that he would use them one day.
I love that.
Yeah, so just trying to like establish myself, even as I really felt shaken by by a lot of rejection, by a lot of hope deferred, and knowing like that more than arriving anywhere, like arriving to a relationship or arriving to being a father or anything like that, that the most important thing was walking with God and walking in community with people, whether that arrived or not. And so my mom, a few years before I started meeting with Pietze, my mom had started meeting, and my dad and both my sisters and my
listen, when the whole family gets into it, it changes the family.
my brother's the lone holdout, but so all three of my sisters.
We'll get him one day.
But yeah, so they started meeting with her a little while before I did, and then finally I started meeting with her, and it was right around the time that I had gotten a prophetic word about marriage, and pretty much like, now's the time. And it set me back into a level of panic.
Yes.
And anxiety and high stakes that I know wasn't the intention of the word, but what it did in me brought me to a lot of that. And I think it was our first session, Pietze was able to just take me to a place of like, hey, you've walked with God through this, and now let's get back to that. Like, this is still in his hands. This is not on you. Let's take that pressure off of you. And I know that leading up to meeting Rachel, that like coming to that revelation again, like being back in that place, set that up to be what it is now.
Yeah.
I
love that. Yeah. I love this. I love this story so much, even just how it's already begun, where you're like, oh my gosh, she had a baby and she's a single mom, and then there's this guy who's been reading parenting books and he doesn't even have a kid yet. And we know they end up together, and we're like, ah, this is so cute. I can't handle it. I'm gonna have Pietze share about how they set up. I do want to say one thing just for my ADHD brain that has nothing to do with what either of you guys said, just what I said the last time, which is I want people to know that there are lots of times that I know people who got married because they felt like that's what God said. Afterwards, they realized, I don't know if that's true or not, and they were able to still work it out and figure out how to become. So I just wanted it to be like, it's not hopeless. If you're one of those people listening and you're like, I thought I heard and I think it was wrong, there is, we've also seen so many stories of redemption. There's times that you need to leave, like Rachel needed to leave. That was a very healthy decision for her. But there's also times where you can have a thriving, beautiful relationship, even if it started off wrong. So I just want hope for everybody listening. I didn't want anybody who's like, oh, my relationship started off bad. Is it doomed forever? No, it's not. But that has nothing to do with your guys' story. I just had to pipe it in. But I'm loving this. So Pietze, let's keep this story going.
Yeah. So let's keep the story going. So at this point, and it was around the same time, actually, that I started meeting with Rachel and started meeting with Josh separately, didn't know each other. And the interesting thing is that both of them, when they started, obviously, most of the time when you're reaching out to get life consulting, it's not because life is going fantastic, but both of them were in a really hard place. Like they said, Rachel had just come, out of the divorce and was walking through it. And Josh, that word was so, and I love that he shared that too, because it's so interesting because, when we talk about the prophetic, and we've talked about it here on the podcast before, you can go back and listen to those episodes that Rachel talked about, but it's supposed to be encouraging. And it's funny because even if the intent sometimes is encouraging, it can completely spiral you
unravel you, bring depression and despair, feel a little pressure, make you feel shame. What am I doing? Am I ruining it? Is it my fault? Like a lot of blame comes up when there's prophetic, because it's like, well, is it God's fault? Is it my fault? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it was cool because that first session with Josh, I was like, all right, we're going to take the pressure off of this. We're going to get you back to a place where you feel surrendered and content. And I was so proud of Josh because he really did. He was able to get back there. He went on dates again, and he was like working on himself. I felt so proud. And then even just meeting with Rachel, it was really cool because I think Rachel, we spent a lot of time even reflecting on the prophetic words that you had gotten before you got married to your ex-husband, and just kind of dissecting, okay, where was it God? And then where was it that she had abandoned herself and just kind of, and stepped over boundaries in order to try to fulfill what she thought were the prophetic words. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a lot of like sorting through stuff. And it was interesting because both of them, I would say in our sessions, both felt like I still really have a desire to be married.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Rach too, I mean, wouldn't you say, Rachel, that part of it too was even we had to kind of work through worthiness of getting married again.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of the stuff that you kind of had dealt with is, okay, well, I blew it because I had the one and now that's gone. And will God actually like bless me because I feel like I've screwed it up?
Right.
You know?
And divorce, I feel like still is somewhat taboo sometimes, depending what communities you're in and what beliefs are around that. And so
Yeah.
I feel like just meeting with Pietze was so helpful because she was just so reassuring and affirming, because any little thing I could find of hopeful stories with someone who got divorced with a toxic situation, because that the divorce is one of the hardest things ever. And just I agree with what you said, like that is not everyone's story. And just finding stories of hope of like, okay, so maybe someone would want to be with me and my child, and wanting my child to have a healthy father and know what that looks like to be in a healthy home was such a desire too when I started meeting.
Yeah. And it's cool because I would say both of you guys got to the place where you were still like really wanted that, but also felt really released and just like at peace within the season that you were in.
When me and Pietze talk about surrender, just so you guys know, the definition that we come from is surrender is not giving up the desire you have, but giving up the belief that you can't be okay until you have that desire. So it's holding on to, I can want marriage, I can want to be married, but I'm not going to believe that I can't be happy now, that I can't be fulfilled now. Like I can be fulfilled and happy and still long for that. And it's, I mean, it's hard, but because surrender is such a Christianese word, I'm wanting to just define that that's what we're talking about.
I'm so glad that you did, because that's Abby and I's, like, this is our definition of surrender. And we live by that definition and it's really hard for a lot of people to hold the gray. We either want to be like focused on it and all about that thing, get desperate, or we say, okay, that's just never going to happen. It's never going to happen for me. I have to kill everything. And so much of the time it's living in that gray area of not giving up, but also learning how to be content and happy without. And both of them had gotten there. And it was funny because I remember one night I was laying in bed next to Johnny and I was like, I need to set Josh up. I was like, come on, like this Christian guy reads parenting books, just wants to be a dad and like a husband and a father. And I'm like, I know a bazillion single girls, there's got to be someone I could set this dude up with. And so all of a sudden I'm like telling Johnny, I'm like, I got to set Josh up. I really feel like I need to set Josh up. So I start scanning my mind and I'm like, and I was like, if I could set Josh up with anyone, it would be Rachel. Like, I think Rachel, because, you know, now being a life consultant, I know personalities, I know dynamics, I know kind of the way that they function. And I'm like, I think Rachel would be such a good fit for Josh. And I literally pop up out of bed and I was like, Johnny, I'm going to set Josh up with Rachel. And he was laughing so hard. He's like, it is midnight. Go to bed. What is your problem? Like, and he knew. He's like, I got like so energized. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, but I don't know. I see people all over the world. And I knew Josh lived in Detroit, but I didn't know where Rachel lived. I couldn't remember. And I thought maybe she was one of my like Canadian clients or something, which it's not impossible. It just makes it harder to set people up if it's international, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I got to figure out where Rachel lives. So I like do all this detective work to figure out like where her payments to me came from, like finding paperwork. And somehow I find an area code. So I type the area code where the payments are coming from that she's paying me for sessions. So I'm being a creeper here, outing myself. And not only does she live in the United States, but she also happens to live in Michigan, 30 minutes away from where Josh lives.
Ah!
And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like jumping on the bed. I was like, Johnny, she lives right by him. I am going to set up Josh and Rachel. I was like, oh my gosh, you are crazy. Go to bed. So I get like so energized. I can't stop thinking about it. I'm like imagining the wedding. I'm like, this is going to happen. This is it. I mean, but it really did. It felt like the Holy Spirit to me, where I was like, this is just too crazy. Why would I even think of this? And so I slept on it. And the next day I woke up and I was like, that is a horrible idea. I should never set up clients. Like, this is not a good idea, because if this doesn't go well,
you have to hear about it.
Oh yeah. And I am so sorry.
Totally.
I mean, not that I can take responsibility for all of it, but
right.
Seriously, I'm like, do I want to create a mess here?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I was like, this is a horrible idea. So I think I waited like 2 months on it.
Wow.
And just prayed and sat with it. Like, I'm just going to sit with it and see. And meantime, like, Josh is kind of like dating people. So I'm like, I'm going to kind of see where some of these dates go. And finally, after 2 months, I'm like, this just is not going away. Like, it was like building inside of me, like a pimple that needed to be squeezed.
Like, I have to.
Glad
it was like building, pressure building, must set up clients. So I was like literally on the phone with Rachel, and I was like, think about if I were to set you up with a guy. And she was like, Rachel's so quiet. She's like, okay. And I was like, okay, I like a creeper went and found some pictures of Josh on his mom's Facebook. I screenshotted them and sent them to her. And then I texted Josh, so Rachel and I are all giddy. And I was like, what do you think? And she's like, oh, he's so cute. And I was like, yeah, he is, girl. Get it. So then I'm like, okay, great. Okay, so I have Rachel. Okay, so then I text Josh and I was like, Rach, send me some hot pictures of you. She sends me pictures. I was like, hey, Josh, text him. Hey, Josh. And he's like, hey. And I'm like, how you doing? He's like, good. And I'm like, hey, what do you think if I set you up with a girl? He's like, good. Typical dude. Girls are like, oh my gosh. Guys are like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I was like, can I send you some pictures? So I sent him pictures of Rachel, and he goes, she's cute. and I was like, oh, that's great, Josh. She said she thinks you're cute, by the way. And he's like, tell her right back at her. And I was like, I'm in. So I introduced them through a group text, I think. And you guys hit it off and went on a date, right?
Yeah, we started texting for like about a week. And then I was like, do you want to get together?
Yeah.
And we just started. Yeah, we met, went on a first date, and he laughed about this yesterday because he started getting all these phone calls at the end of the day. He's like, oh yeah, people are trying to figure out how it went. And I looked at him like, so what are you going to tell them? How did it go? He's like, whoa, she's not messing around.
You're like, no, I'm not messing around. Okay?
Right.
I've been through this before.
What did he say?
I'm trying to remember. You're like, oh, that it went good, or I don't remember.
Yeah. She was fun and very deliberate and intentional. She shared so much. She didn't hold anything back. And I think it set the pace right off the bat for the rest of our relationship, because we really tried to find the balance of having fun and falling in love, but then also being very intentional and purposeful and not blowing by those red flags if any were there, not not like ignoring any of the questions or having any of the conversations that you need to have.
Yeah, like our third date was with my best friends because so many of my family and friends were super protective. So we got family and friends in right away. And then what really like got me to say yes too was because Pietze, I was so nervous of bringing someone around my daughter, and Pietze was like, I would not recommend Josh unless he was a safe person for her. Because in my mind, I'm like, if I ever date again, they're not meeting my kid for 6 months. And
Totally.
And he ended up meeting her so quickly. And the first time he met her, she just warmed right. She acted like she knew him. It was so, I texted my friends, I'm like, she's acting like she knows him, and she's not like that. She warmed right up to him. It was so wild. And
what was that like for you, Josh?
It was really amazing. I was trying to be very cautious to show that I was intentional and eager, because I was, but then not to be too overbearing, because especially, I have friends that are single moms, and I know how like guarded and protected that is, and how important it is to, obviously keep the children safe in so many different ways, but, emotionally safe. And, Sophia is so young, but just, wanting her to be so valued and honored in the process. But it did feel so good knowing that, just like feeling her warm up to me right away, and knowing that that's not always the case was even more special.
Yeah, so special. And I think what's cool too is I just think it's funny because when I got the idea to set you guys up, I was thinking about Sophia, but I was like, Josh will be I think Josh will be awesome with her. But I didn't think about the fact until later that I was like, oh, it's so cool, because such a big desire of Josh's heart is kids, and how like great that actually, was. But when would you guys say that you started actually, that you knew that you were actually like falling in love with each other? And what was that?
You guys, your faces are so freaking cute. I'm so sad the audience can't see this because you guys are adorable.
I mean, it was pretty quickly, but with our jobs, we were able to talk on the phone a lot and really get to know each other really fast, and really included our family and friends really fast.
Yeah, it was a couple months in. She looked at me one day and was just like, are you thinking what I'm thinking? And
or did you say that? I don't remember.
One of us said it. And I was like, oh, that I love you. And she was like, oh, I was thinking, oh, maybe we might get married someday.
Yeah, you thought that too.
That's so sweet.
And that's another, like, we were both on the same page, like every time, like every step of the relationship. It wasn't like one person was like feeling something more than the other. And then we got to talking, and realizing over the years we had been in the same room for like the last 8 years, like at conferences.
What?
Like you were telling Pietze when you spoke at the 2 times you spoke at Grace, we were both there in the room.
Happy when you spoke.
Yeah, that was the
in
first
Michigan,
time I
right?
met you.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in Michigan, yeah.
Oh my gosh, you were both there.
They were both there and didn't know each other.
Didn't know each other.
And Rachel has a picture that they're pretty sure is Josh's hand in the picture.
Yeah,
what?
That conference.
We were at
Must
a
have been
concert.
sitting.
Yeah, we were at a Will Reagan and United Pursuit concert, and they only let like 100 people in this old abandoned church. And I was like, I was there. And he goes, oh, I was there. And I'm like, look at my pictures. He goes, that's where I was standing, that corner of the room. And I'm like, that looks like your hand.
Shut up. That is
so
crazy.
things. So we joke. I'm like, why didn't you come talk to me?
That is wild.
Yeah.
Like there were so many times that I love even like that they were in the same room hearing Abby speak.
Yeah.
And then years later, here you are on the podcast. But isn't it weird that it took you meeting like both randomly? Take like what's so crazy is I take such a small amount of clients, and I have such a long,
absolutely,
such a long waiting list. Yeah, Abby's like, yeah, you take like no one.
Yeah, it's very true.
Let me just say, it's a tough life when you're an introvert and a life consultant, okay?
And a full-time mom, and you're just also, there's a lot. Yeah.
All the things. But the fact that they started both meeting with me at the same time.
It's wild.
And like that, people that I was like, oh, these two need to get set up. But then in retrospect, understanding that you guys had been around each other, running in the same circles, have mutual friends.
Wow.
This whole time. So, Josh, when did you decide that you were gonna propose to Rachel?
It was after like 5-6 months that I knew that I wanted to. And originally we started talking about a date before I even proposed. We just had that knowing. We just had so much peace. Because I think like if you like flashing back to some of what we talked about with prophetic words, Rachel especially, she was like, God, we just want you to walk with us through this. We don't want all the flash. We don't need any prophetic words. We just want you to be with us. We want our friends and family to feel comfortable. And we want to be so intentional. And like, as we walked all those things out, as we just enjoyed every moment that we spent together, as we fell in love, we just tried to walk out that process. And we just do.
Yeah, and I just want to say this really quick is one thing that was really different than the first time is that you guys really vetted each other with each other's friends and family. And, when you're in that dating courtship phase, you're in infatuation. And when you're in infatuation, you can't, it just is in the brain. Infatuation is going off and both people are bringing their best foot forward, right? Because they're trying to win the deal. They're doing whatever they can. And even if you're trying not to do that, you're automatically doing it. It's just how the brain works, being in the infatuation phase. And so vetting your partner is a way of actually people outside of the situation. Is this a good fit for me? Is this someone that you think would really line up with me? And so it was really cool because both of you guys, while you felt things, you took time to really vet each other, to bring each other around to your friends and family. You guys started meeting with me pretty soon after. And so it was really cool because you really took your time this time to make sure,
thoroughly vetted, still infatuated.
Yes.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Yep. That is where we are at this moment.
Aww.
But I decided to propose last.
Now, I do want to just ask this question. I'm sorry. And then you can jump into the proposal. So when you realized you were dating a single mom, what was your thoughts about that? What were your feelings about that?
For me, I think it goes back to what I knew about my life, that yes, I want to have my own kids, but I've always wanted to have the opportunity to adopt one day. And so, a lot of her friends even asked me that, like, how do you feel about this? Is this hard for you? And honestly, I know this is not necessarily the case for everybody, but just because of like knowing that about myself, it was so easy to just fall in love with her at the same time as I fell in love with Rachel. And, just developing a relationship on her terms and like allowing her to continue to accept me in her life has been such a fun and beautiful part of this journey as well, that has been so rewarding, because I know that both of us would call this a redemption story for us, but so much for her too. And I'm so grateful to be a part of that story for her, because she deserves it so much. She just deserves the best. And I know I want to be that for her in every way that I can.
Ugh, Rachel, you're over there crying. What are you
I'm like,
feeling?
"Here,
We're all crying with you.
I'll stop for the next 5 hours.
What are you feeling while he's talking?
It's just like, it's just so the Lord to, Josh has said, like, at the end of the day, like, he's our prize, like, not even each other, but he is our prize. And just to see him redeem so much of our stories and the ways we've been able to help heal each other with different wounds from relationships, and and here's this little girl who gets to experience this redemption, and the Lord just sees her too, and just this feeling like, oh, all the mistakes I made and he's made, like, will we have like this beautiful marriage and story, and like God has created that, and it's just been so beautiful to watch it all unfold. So hearing him say that, I'm still just, I feel like I cry so often just looking at him or thinking about it, cause just thinking where we both came from.
I think it sounds like both of your hearts had been broken by love.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you both are getting to be a part of your hearts getting to grow back towards wholeness by love. The very thing that breaks us is often also the very thing that heals us.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
Really good.
it's beautiful that you have gotten to experience a piece of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way, Josh, about marriage with her as well, that it's been redemptive for you?
Oh, in so many ways. It's just beautiful to feel so safe, to bring my strength, but also to be broken. And I think that's how we get to approach it, of like, there's nothing about this that's perfect, but it's real and it's true. And we're like, we have really hard days, and we have really amazing days, but that's beautiful.
Marriage.
Yep. It's all beautiful though, because we're in it and we're committed to it, and it's worth it. Every moment of it is so worth it, no matter how easy it is or how hard it is. It's like I don't gauge a good day by how smoothly it went, but it's like a good day is that we just keep doing it together, keep walking it out. And it's been so healing for me, someone who is equally or even more committed to it than I am, because she's such a intentional and purposeful person.
Yeah, she is.
And it's just beautiful for me.
I think that's so well articulated. Everybody's going to be crying out there with us, but it's so well articulated, because marriage is, there's no way not to, you have your deepest triggers show up in marriage, because we all have our deepest fears around our primary attachment. That is where all of the pain, all of our triggers from childhood, everything comes up. So there isn't a way to just have a flawless, easy marriage where there's no work involved or no triggers or no whatever.
Yes.
But to feel like you are in a relationship where there's safety to go through that process together and learn and grow is a huge gift.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay. I love that you shared that, both of you. That's very beautiful and heartwarming. I don't want to ruin you sharing your proposal story. Is that where you guys were at?
Yeah. So I decided to propose, and the one thing that she told me she wanted was to be surprised. And she also challenged me with, I'm impossible to surprise.
Challenge accepted.
So I took that personally. And that process involved, I think, the only lies that I've told.
Oh my God.
Because it was impossible to throw her off the scent. Any little thing that I planned, she was like, "Oh, so that's when you're gonna propose." And I'm like, you just need to not say anything. So
turn that discernment off, girl.
Yeah, he came up with a lie one day, and I was like, "Oh, I think I said something like that," and then he made me feel so bad that I ruined his plan, even though this wasn't his plan. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person."
I set up a fake plan with her friend.
Oh, that is smart.
Yeah.
So smart, Josh.
I was like, I needed to be a little upset, but I was like, I don't want to push this too far. I don't want to cause any actual damage here. But I knew what was so important to all of us, or to both of us, was to have a moment that was personal, but that we could also share with both our families. And then two of her closest friends, Kyle and Julia, who had walked through her divorce with her, who had been such important people, like having their approval was very important to me, because they had seen so much. They had known her before, they had known her after, they had known her through it. And so they live about an hour and a half away from us, in a really quaint and picturesque part of Michigan. And so I knew that both our families wanted to connect, and that they liked to go up there separately. And so I was like, I kind of let her plan her own proposal, because she
smart
everyone being there. And so he got us all there, and we had walked around different parts before, and I knew the general area along a riverfront that I wanted to propose at. And we were all walking together, and I slowly started to pull her away from the pack. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Just go with it." And finally got far enough away and got down on one knee and became utterly speechless and forgot everything that I was planning on saying.
I know, everyone was like,
So real.
and I'm like,
I mostly just cried.
Oh.
And Sophia ran up to us, and she was like, she wanted the ring. And I was like, "No, this is for Mom. This is not for you. You're a part of this, but this is not for you specifically." And finally found enough words to say your name and, "Will you marry me?" And everyone got to be there, and it was really amazing. I know Pietze is going to share some of the backstory.
Yeah. Pietze,
I mean, I gotta share this.
ring.
I gotta share this story. First, Rachel, what did you think when he proposed? Were you surprised? Did he actually surprise you?
Yeah, I was surprised because I was like,
Aw.
there's no way he would do it that day. It's too predictable. Like we're all there. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's smart. Smart. Do it when she thinks you're gonna do it, so she doesn't think you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
So
a good.
smart,
That was a good
Josh.
mind trick.
Yeah. So the cool thing that I found out afterwards is that about 8 years before Josh proposed, it was during a time when he was kind of one of the seasons when he was going through a really hard time and had really deep hope deferred. And during that time, his grandfather passed away, and his parents ended up inheriting a bunch of jewelry from the grandparents. And one of them happened to be this ring with a diamond in it. And so Josh's parents were going through a hard time financially and decided they're not big jewelry people. So they're like, we'll just pawn the jewelry. We could use the money. And they went to pawn this ring and decided to go to take it to a jeweler instead to get it appraised. And when they took it to this jeweler, this older man walks up and he's like, this is a beautiful ring. It's a vintage European cut diamond. But at that point, he's like, these kind of cuts are not in style. So I'll probably take it and get it cut differently to a more modern cut. And he gave them an estimate of what it was worth. And it was a pretty significant amount. But as they were walking out of the jewelry store, Josh's mom just felt God clearly speak to her and say, don't sell the ring, hold on to it as a promise for Josh, that one day he is going to get married. He is going to make it through this, and that it's all going to be redeemed. And so she held on to that ring for 8 years, didn't tell anyone. Josh, both of his parents prayed. They believed for Josh. I say never underestimate the power of a praying parent. And they held on to this ring, didn't tell him. And so when you went to propose to Rachel, you were like, okay, I got to save up for a ring now, and went to and talked to your parents, right, Josh? And was it at that point that your mom like wrote you a letter and gave you the ring?
Yep.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. This story, how does it get better? It does. It
I
does.
know.
Yeah,
So-
I was overwhelmed
Josh.
because that was the first time I got to hear that story, and it was like, oh my goodness. Just a picture of such a promise that they held on to for me, even in times that I couldn't hold on to it myself.
Gosh, that makes me want to cry.
I know, me
But
too.
that's exactly what it was, is that they held on to it. And so they ended up giving Josh the ring and writing him a letter about it. And oh my gosh, it makes me want to cry because I just think it's so like, I don't know. It's just so telling of the whole story. But the cool thing is that Rachel wanted a vintage cut diamond. And so this ring was a vintage cut diamond. And when they took it back into the jeweler, the exact thing that she wanted, when they took it back into the jeweler to get it sized and set in a new band, a young man walks up to the counter and they were like, we brought this ring in, an older man, and he was like, that was my father. He's passed away, but he's exactly right. This is a beautiful ring. I'm so glad that you held on to it. It's going to be perfect. Like, this is a perfect vintage cut diamond. Ugh. And so even the ring was like completely came together and had sewn in it a story of redemption.
Oh my gosh. This is so good.
I know. So cool. So you get the ring. What did you think of the ring, Rach?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, I've been staring at it this whole time. It's freaking ginormous. It's stunning. It like blings like there's no other business. It's stunning.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And didn't you say, Pietze, that it was worth much more than originally it had been appraised for?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And it had gone up in value significantly.
Yeah.
Which was just amazing. Yeah, it was just so amazing. So they had a whirlwind engagement. And that leads us up. They asked me to officiate. You guys didn't know what you were getting into when you asked me to officiate. My first wedding I've ever officiated. And so we get to the wedding and it was a pretty amazing day. What were your highlights of the day?
It was just so peaceful and so non-traditional. Like, I probably had like 6 little kids in my dressing room with men coming in, and there was like 20 people coming in and out, but it was just like so laid back. And I think a big part too is just having the kids in the room. And I know my daughter was running up and down my lap during the wedding, and we had worship there and prayer, and yeah, it was just a beautiful, we both are very practical people. So we're like, we don't want all these crazy, I mean, they're beautiful, but for us, we were like, we just don't want some of the traditions of American weddings and the cost. And so just how beautiful it came together, and the Lord providing for them. Yeah.
And the presence of God was so thick. Like when you came down the aisle, I don't think that there was a dry eye in the house. I turned to Josh. Josh and I look at each other. We're both crying. Rachel's crying, walking down the aisle. Everybody's crying. And you could just feel, I think one thing, like even for you guys going into it, and we all felt this, we're like, this feels like it's gonna, like the tangible presence of redemption and love of God is going to be there. And it was like, it just felt so powerful. Like the presence of God felt so thick, and the love in the room, and just the love that they had for each other, and the way that they looked at each other when Rachel was walking down the aisle, like, and even the way that they looked at each other when they were saying their vows and making their vows to each other, I just felt like was such a powerful gift of like, wow, like, look at what God did. I think that was the thing that we all just kept saying. It's like, look at what God did. Look at what God did.
Yeah.
All
the people who spoke at the wedding, like friends and family, just their words over us were so powerful.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very
it
beautiful.
was so powerful.
Yeah, it was just very relaxed. I loved the kids running around. It just set me at my ease. I always knew I never wanted something that felt like a performance, or that it needed to be perfect in order for it to be good. And everything just felt like a comfortable conversation amongst friends. Pietze just brought everyone into like every aspect. I mean, most of the people, it was very small, most of the people knew, but anyone that didn't know, she brought everyone into the story so well. And we just kind of got to sit and celebrate and with the people that were so close to us, and also see, like, once again, like especially the people in her life that watched her go through that, her season of divorce,
pain,
to see the redemption for them too, of like, like they walked with her through that, and now they got to see her, with the smile on her face, and just coming back into the life, watching the life just flow through her again. And it was really touching for me, and the way that they've all accepted me when I know that they could have very easily been like, who is this guy? And they've just shown me so much love, which has been so important to me, because I know for us, the big thing that we want going forward is just to share that simple life in community with people, and just to watch Sophia and any other kids that we're blessed to have, like, grow up and just have that safe place and that love with friends and family.
Okay, I saw a little look there, guys.
Speaking of other kids,
I saw a look. What did that look mean?
So
we are pregnant.
That's so exciting. Surprise to anybody who didn't know yet.
It's not a secret, but it's not widely spoken of yet.
We found out we're fertile people. Because the Josh dating was like, we know you're okay, but what if I'm not okay? And then when I told him I'm pregnant, I'm like, you got it.
Yeah, I guess we're okay.
So that's why. Did it surprise you both when you found out you were pregnant? It was not something on your mind yet.
I would say it wasn't planned and it wasn't unplanned.
Yeah.
We just
We're having fun. That's what they were doing.
They were having fun. That feels worth it.
Yeah.
I love it. So,
which I think is what we wanted. I think sometimes those moments and decisions can become so stressful, and because even that has been such a healing thing for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
In our sex lives. And so I think that's like the beautiful thing of, and the blessed part, because I know that is such a hard part of some people's stories.
mm-hmm.
And I've walked with some friends, very close friends, through that and how hard that is.
Mm-hmm.
And but for us, just like in the midst of that healing journey in that part of our lives, this just came as the greatest of surprises through that.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I love that. And now you get to experience pregnancy in a relationship where you feel safe and where you're not having to, like, has that already affected you yet? Or
100%. Just having someone support you and just be there for you and feel so safe and not be so stressed out the whole time and feeling unsafe and going through so much traumatic events. It's like so redeeming.
Yeah, it feels like a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, would you guys, I want to just give a couple closing thoughts as we wrap this up. I just love your guys' story. It's so sweet and it's so hopeful. And it is such a good remembrance of love and redemption. And I have a couple thoughts. The first thing is, I just want to put out there, one of the things that happens when we've experienced a lot of pain and trauma is you can listen to someone's hopeful story and you can think that happens for other people, not for me. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the most painful belief systems for anyone. And I know because I've had that about all kinds of things in my life. I was like, oh, well, those type of people get stories like that, or that type of redemption or healing happens for those kinds of people. And I just want to break the lie. Like, I just want to, for people listening, like, there's not one person on the planet that isn't open for a story of love and redemption. And I think you guys have done a beautiful job of giving God credit, and I love that. But there's also the fact that both of you really dug into your own healing journeys, because it's not just that, like, I know a lot of people that are praying for something magical, but if you are operating out of your fear and belief systems, if you keep choosing the same kind of person, you'll keep choosing the same kind of person. And so there is something to be said for the fact that you guys decided to work on what was going on inside of your world, spending time in the transformation process. Because I've had to have help. I had a cycle of being drawn to abusive people in my life, and I needed help to be able to get out of that. And it wasn't just, it's not just that God sometimes magically gives something to somebody. Right. There is a price that you both have paid on the journey alongside of it to engage in redemption for yourselves, to engage in healing and wholeness and reading books and listening and keeping your heart soft and working through your stuff and working through your stuff with your family. And so I just, for those of you listening, I want to empower you that, one, you don't have to just wait and hope that someday some good story happens to you. You can engage redemption in love, not in a striving way, not in a you have to make it happen for yourself way, not in a pressurized way, but in a hope-filled, you have power while you're in the waiting. And I wanted to also just speak to every person listening. I don't care if you're married or unmarried, like, married people can have redemptive love stories without having to get divorced. Like they can be in a hard marriage and you can go through divorce and have redemption, or you can stay married and have redemption. Like no one is disqualified. If you are listening to this podcast, you are qualified for redemption. You are qualified to have love heal you. People of every age can meet a friend who loves them in a way they've never been loved before, can find a church or a group or a community or family, or their family can change. I was just talking to somebody the other day and their parents are changing. And so the love that they wanted from a redemption story is happening because their parents are changing. And there's just endless ways that redemption stories can happen. And I want to encourage you, when you're listening and you hear a redemption story, again, the voice that wants to steal life will always say, that's not for you, for your circumstance. You ruined it too much, or this is too bad, or you're too stuck. And no one on the planet is hopeless or powerless. There's room for healing and redemption. I think that's why we get the opportunity on the planet. We get the chance to choose love. And as we choose love often gets to take up more and more space in our lives. So I just wanted to speak to everybody listening. But I wondered if you guys would just actually, I don't know if you'd be willing to do this, if you would just pray for redemption stories for listeners, and for healing stories for people who are out there who've given up hope, or who have disqualified themselves, or just who don't see how it could happen. Would you be open to doing that?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. God, we just speak to every person's heart that listens to this, and we just say, would you revive hope again? Would you come close to them, the God of hope? And would you continue to walk with each and every person through this process, that the places that you need to take them to in order for them to walk into hope, walk into redemption, walk into the love that they desire, that the space that needs to be created in their hearts, that you would just carve it all out, that it would be a whatever it takes attitude from each and every person, that no matter how hard it gets or how far they feel from this, that they would keep hoping, that they would keep believing, because walking with you is enough. Walking with you into freedom is worth it. Walking with you into redemption is so safe, because you're always there and you never forsake us.
And thank you, God, that you are such a good, loving Father. And I thank you for restoring loving Father in people's lives, that those who haven't known a loving Father, or parents, or community, that you're drawing so near to them. And like Abby said, drawing them to a place of stepping into healing and self-realization, and going after things, that you would slowly begin to reveal things in people's hearts that they need to walk through and go through, just to experience that breakthrough and that healing. And I just break any lies of shame that might be coming up in anyone's hearts. I just kept feeling that so strongly, just any shame or any lie from the enemy. I thank you, God, that you have so much hope for every single person who will listen to this, that there's redemption in their story, no matter what it looks like. And I thank you for that restored hope and that confidence in who they are in you, and who they are, who you've called them to be. I thank you for that, God. I pray for so much peace over every person who listens to this, that they only would feel so drawn to you, God, and so drawn to redemption and breakthrough over their lives. I thank you for this, Jesus.
Yeah, God, we just invite love for every listener, that love would come awaken their hearts, that love would open them up again, that love would come. We invite love to create more space in our lives. God, wreck us with your love. That we would know your love in the areas that we think you can't, in all the areas that we think you don't see, in all the areas that we're afraid that we're alone or the pressure is on us, that love would come in and lift the load and lift the heaviness and lift the questions. And I just feel like some of you out there are striving to get to the dream, whatever the dream is that you have, the career or the spouse or the house or the children or whatever it is. I see some of you striving, and I just see like love coming and just lifting off the pressure to figure out how. And then I see some of you felt stuck and powerless. And I saw love coming like a wind, blowing you to actually take steps forward. And so we just invite love to meet you where you're at with what you need on this journey. And I just feel the last thing I wanted to say is I changed my mindset years ago. I try to change it anyway. That when I hear a story that is beautiful, that I think there's something about this that is meant to expand what I think I'm worthy of. So when I hear a story that's beautiful, it's meant to expand, because I'll feel that tension inside. I'll hear a story maybe about somebody's life and I'll be like, oh, well, that's not for me. And then what I do is I actually see that every story is meant to expand what I think I'm worthy of and what I think is an opportunity for my life. And so even for me, I'm listening to this story and thinking, oh, there's so much redemption and healing in your family story. And so even for my heart, like I will sit and just be like, God had a story about your children. God has a story about my children, whatever that looks like for me. And I get to like pull on the beauty. Stories are meant to pull us into believing there's more for us and to helping us get our hopes up again in areas that they have, where we've lost sight. So I just want to encourage you out there to listen to stories as expanders. I literally see stories, they expand the territory of what my mind visualizes as possible for me. And I have been married for 13 years. 14. We're about to hit 14. And and so I listen to a story like yours and I just like receive, when I'm listening, I like just soak in the beauty of the redemption of your story. Even though that's I'm not in the season of falling in love, I still get to feel that. So I just wanted to invite all of our listeners to be able to really, there is such a tangible, beautiful thing on your guys' life. Pietze, did you have anything you wanted to say before I close?
Just one thing in closing that I want to say, and it's just kind of off of a continuation of what Josh said earlier. But one thing that I just want people to know too is that, you know, like we were saying, Josh and Rachel really started digging in and doing the work before they ever met each other. And then when they met each other, it was a continuation of continuing. You know, meeting each other brought up new pain, new triggers that they had to work through. Then getting married brought up even more stuff. So and now it's still a continuation of redemption and healing. It's, you know,
it's
I think
not
sometimes
a one time.
Oh, I got married and now it's all fixed and it's better just because I have a better person. It still is. They're laughing because they know we just did a marriage counseling session this week and they're still continuing to meet with me. It's literally just that their process of healing was joined together then. And being together has brought up more stuff that's needed to get healed. And so I'm really proud of Josh and Rachel because they've stayed committed to the process. And I think no matter where you're at in the journey, you can say yes, or where you're at in your story, you can say yes to the journey of healing, you know, and trust that the right people will come alongside your journey at the right times and actively do the work to seek it, you know? And so I'm just really proud of you guys and I love you guys so much. And I'm so thankful to have been a part of your story.
Love you so much.
Love you.
Very, very beautiful and very hopeful. I think that's really good, Pietze. It's just normal life. When you're in the middle of a redemption story, it doesn't feel like magical movies every day. It feels very, very normal. And you're like, I'm mad about how they do the dishes, and nobody said that that would matter in this marriage. You know what I mean? They're like, he's so much better than everyone else that I dated, but also still there's problems. People just think happily ever after means there's nothing, but I love that, Pietze. It's also why we suggest courses for families and friends. You can check out on our website, justinabby.com. We have a compassion project course. Me and Pietze have the Pathway to Freedom. We do Living Fully Alive. All of those things. We see massive breakthrough in relationships when relationships both get to go on the healing process together. So you guys can check that out. One thing I just couldn't help but feel when we were listening was how long have you guys been married for?
Since January.
Okay, so it's
like 4 months.
And you're about to have a baby. I just feel like when I was listening, I was like, I think that there are people, including me, I'm going to do this myself, so I'm not putting this on our listeners, but I was like, I think some people need to send you baby gifts, wedding gifts. Like, I just think that there's things that we need to financially contribute to your guys' redemption story. Sometimes I like sewing into stories where I'm like, I want more redemption in my life, so I want to be a part of adding to your redemption story. And so what I'll probably do is just have you guys make a list of things that you guys need and an address. And nobody knew I was doing this, just so that we're clear. But I do think that, like, I could just feel it the whole time we were listening. I was like, we are supposed to help launch your family story. Like that, the global community is supposed to be a part of this redemption.
I have chills all over my body.
So we'll just have you guys make a list, or else we'll just have people send in money or things that you need, whatever. So you can email us at, gosh, I don't know what the email address is. Abby@stumbalconsulting.com. That's ABI at STUM as in Mary, V as in Victory, OLL consulting.com. If you feel that feeling in your heart, and like I could tell you guys have been so frugal and responsible with your, like, frugal in a good way. Like, you've been really responsible in engaging, loving each other, and financial responsibility. But I just feel like this is a season for you guys to feel the goodness of breakthrough in finances too. So if you're out there, join me in sending them something to tell them, hell yeah to your life.
Thank
so
you.
Much.
Yeah. You guys are little love nuggets. I wish you guys could all see them. They're so freaking cute. So
yes, they're the cutest. I'll post pictures on Instagram.
Yeah, me too.
So that people can see.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us. As always, share this episode with the people that you love and the people that you hate. Anybody that you want their life to get better.
Somebody you want to marry. Somebody you want to marry.
Yep.
Something in their head, maybe.
Absolutely. Manipulate the crap out of somebody you want to marry. I believe in that.
It's not manipulation. It's subliminal message.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.